Welcome to Game Day Wrap-Up Week 11 edition. Mike, it was a wild week. As anticipated, I would say that by and large, it lived up to the hype.
Cam, it definitely lived up to the hype. I mean, there was so much action this weekend. I've basically have forgotten what happened on Saturday. I'm glad I took great game notes so we can recap this thing, man. But yeah, it was a fantastic weekend. We had a little bit of everything, a little bit of controversy on a couple of games. Yeah, man, I can't wait to get started to tell everyone about this great weekend.
Yeah, it was a crazy week in the SFL and an extended week. We'll get to Monday night's game as well later in the show. Let's start with the biggest game of the weekend, the highly anticipated matchup. It was a battle of the Titans. It was a battle for the North Division. That's Queen City and Baltimore. And at the end of the day, just like Queen City proved against Florida, they're a great team. They can hang with all the best, all the tough teams in the league, but just like Florida, they just came up a little short. 30-21 Baltimore wins. How did you see the game and what was the difference?
Wow, Cam, as you mentioned, Queen City against Florida, I kind of felt like when they played Florida a couple of weeks ago, Florida just proved that they were better than them in the end, and maybe Baltimore proved that to a certain extent. But this game, I felt like they had a great game plan. They played great for a vast majority of this game. They dominated Baltimore on the defensive, the defensive line had a great day. I think they had 6 or 7 sacks. David Tilley had 3 sacks. Andre Krim had a couple of sacks. DJ Majesty, I don't want to forget about him. They kept pressure on Jack Wigmore this entire game, and really what they did more than anything, they really slowed the Baltimore defense. The Baltimore offense down, and no quick strike plays for Baltimore, which they are accustomed to doing. Jack Wigmore had a pedestrian day for him, 210 yards. Ivory Irvin had a pedestrian day, only 85 yards receiving. I don't believe he caught a touchdown in this game. But what saved Baltimore in this game was Jimmy Hasley. He had a breakout game this week, 138 yards and a touchdown. He did have a huge 38-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter that put Baltimore ahead by a couple of scores. But, man, Queen City, they proved themselves every bit worthy of competing with Baltimore. But they just came up short. But I guess kudos to Baltimore because they once again proved that, hey, we can accept your challenge, we can stand up to your challenge, and we're going to figure out a way to win in the end.
Queen City forced a Giovanni Bolt fumble, and then they fumbled on a kickoff later in the game, which canceled it out. They had two interceptions on Jack Wigmore in the first half that they turned into 3 points. Canceled it out. The times that Baltimore gave them an opening, Queen City didn't capitalize.
Yeah.
And that, against a great team, if you're trying to pull an upset, you just got to do that, and they just didn't do that, and it was disappointing. They had it right in front of them.
Yeah, Cam, you actually reminded me of something I did want to touch on. Queen City missed a lot of opportunities that they could have actually put 7 or 6 or 7 on the board, but a lot of those opportunities turned into 3. As you mentioned, the Giovanni Bolt fumble, it did turn into a quick Christopher Ochoa touchdown catch, but King Jamal followed that with an interception, but that turned into just a field goal. So they missed a lot of opportunities, but when Baltimore had their opportunities off of some Queen City mistakes, they turned that into touchdowns. And one huge play, Cam, if you remember at the end of this game, I actually put an asterisk on this. Cody Griffin, the rookie, had a dropped possible pick 6 at the end of that game, right before the 2-minute warning, that could have put Queen City ahead with less than 2 minutes to go. That was a huge play in that game. Baltimore, turned that into a Shark Tarkenton field goal, which put them up by 9, which obviously makes that 2 scores with less than a minute to go. And that was a huge play in this game.
Yeah, that was it. They had it. And Cody's been so good this season. It would have signed, sealed, and delivered him Defensive Rookie of the Year, like right there. If he would have done that, I think he still probably has it. But, man, real missed opportunity to make a name for yourself. in that spot, and they come up a little short. So it'll be interesting. Queen City's still going after a first-round bye. They have a head-to-head over Atlanta, so they're hoping that they finish with the same record as them without any other tiebreakers meddling in to that. But they are right there with Florida. They are right there with Baltimore, and whoever they end up drawing in the quarterfinals or the first round, going to have a hard time with the Corsairs. There's no doubt about that. Okay, let's move on to another big game for the week. That was the Atlanta Swarm. They clinched the East Division and left St. Louis behind, even though St. Louis did their darndest to put the pressure on them. Atlanta wins convincingly, 31-14. They were outstanding in every sense. They played a totally perfect game, it felt like, when looking back on this, and they cruise. They were up 31-7 forever. Portland added a touchdown late, but this was all about the Swarm today and the way that they played. It was terrific.
Yeah, this was a great game for Atlanta in particular. They clinched the division, and then going into the playoffs, they're proving that, hey, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with in these playoffs. In a couple of weeks. We know Mark Chisholm, we know how great he is as a coach. We know he's going to go in the lab, as he always talks about, and he's going to come up with a great game plan for whomever they may meet in their first playoff game. But let's talk about this game in particular. And one thing that I like about Atlanta that we've seen in the past couple of weeks, BDG Hollywood has been having some outstanding performances over the past couple of weeks. 165 yards rushing in this game, a couple of touchdowns. Bryant Dynasty, he got one of your game balls last week. He had another efficient game this week, 232 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And the defense did a great job on Ezekiel Love. He did get away for a 65-yard touchdown run. He did have 150 yards in this game, but Ezekiel Love, he tends to always end up with 150 yards, no matter what a team, what they're doing to him. But they pretty much held him in check outside of that. And then you add in the weapons of Boo Chisholm and Siege Falco. They both had big touchdown catches in this game. And speaking of the Siege Falco touchdown right before the half, I think it was less than 30 seconds or so, Atlanta decided to go for it on a 4th and 2. Instead of punting the ball away, and that they made the 4th and 2. That turned into a Siege Falco touchdown catch, which put them up 24-7 going into the half. And they got the immediate kickoff after the half and turned that into a long Boo Chisholm touchdown, and then basically game over from there. They were ahead 31-7 at that point. Portland did have a late touchdown catch from Benjamin Warner, but Atlanta they really dominated this game, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with come playoff time.
They stayed aggressive, and they shut it. Atlanta, we say it all the time. Atlanta's the best when they just full of energy. When the hive is buzzing, the team is different. When they're trying to be methodical, that's just not who they are. That's not how they play the best. They play the best full of energy with all the caws and all the boos and all the just all that stuff. So shifting over to Portland a little bit, they're in trouble. They got Vancouver next week. Now, they do get them at home for the first time, by the way. First time they'll be playing Vancouver at home in 3 seasons. And so that's going to be a really compelling matchup because you got 2 great backs, but Portland really uses theirs, and Vancouver's like, sometimes. And so it's just going to be an interesting dynamic there, but they have put themselves in a very precarious spot here heading into this last week of the season because they do not have a signature win on their resume. They got to get a signature win. They had a chance against LA, couldn't do it. Chance against Atlanta, couldn't do it. Now they need it against Vancouver in the biggest spot.
Yeah, that's going to be a big game next weekend for Portland. As you mentioned, they're at 6 wins. They've kind of taken care of their business against teams that they needed to take care of their business against. But as you mentioned, no huge signature wins on that resume. This win will definitely get them to 7 wins and solidify their playoff bid. A loss to Vancouver next weekend could obviously put them in that 6-6 realm that we're accustomed to seeing. Yeah, that we are definitely accustomed to seeing when as far as comes to making the SFL playoffs, and who wants to bite their nails all weekend and hopes that another team can help bail them out. But because their strength of victory right now, is not the greatest. So in a lot of tiebreaker scenarios, they could be on the outside looking in. So going to be a huge game. But Vancouver, they've been kind of a mystery to me in a sense. Yeah, they put up huge numbers. Kendra Hall had a couple of great, touchdown catches this weekend. Tom Pepper ended up with over 400 yards, but to me, it just doesn't seem like the same big explosive offense that I personally have been accustomed to seeing from Vancouver. So that Portland defense may give them some problems next week, and if they're at home, I believe, Cam, I'm not sure, but they could probably eke one out at home on Vancouver. So I mean, it's basically time for Portland to step up and prove themselves playoff worthy.
They got the talent to do it, no doubt about that. They just have to step up, win a big game. Well, Mike, before the week started, I don't think a betting man would have ever said, "Oh, San Diego and Tulsa is going to make the wrap-up this week." 2-8 teams. Cam and Mike are going to be all over this. They talk about all the biggest stuff. Well, we talk about SFL news on this show, and that was definitely SFL news. Tulsa was up 23-7, a 16-point lead with 1:48 to go. They blew that. Backups came in. They never left. San Diego ends up winning the game in overtime. It is the largest comeback in the shortest amount of time in league history. Of course, there have been 21-point comeback, 24-point comebacks, but not inside 2 minutes like that. A 1 in a million game, Mike, but crazy all the same. And to me, the 17 seasons we've been doing this, to still see things that we've never seen before is quite extraordinary. That is the positive outlook from me. The negative outlook, obviously, is you just feel for Tulsa players and fans, and you feel for them going through that in real time, along with all of us. But just your thoughts on a wild San Diego comeback that now has them with some momentum to try to play spoiler against LA next week.
Yeah, Cam, first and foremost, my heart definitely goes out to Tulsa in this game, because they did a lot of the things that I've been, clamoring for over the past couple of weeks. I mean, this was the first game that they'd scored over 17 points in, other than one other game all season long. So they started going, deep a little bit to Gabriel Manning. We saw Jason France get involved. We saw so many things that were positive in their approach to this game, and they were basically dominating this game. They were up 23-7 with halfway through the fourth quarter, with 5:28 left in the fourth quarter. They were up 23-7. So we didn't think in a million years that we would have, end up seeing what we saw. My heart goes out to these guys, but they came out on the losing end of this game in overtime. But San Diego, as you mentioned, they do have a huge opportunity to ruin LA's division championship hopes next week. It's going to be interesting matchups, both games out there in the Pacific. I can't wait to see what happens next week.
It could go from 0 to 4 wins. I think San Diego would call that a pretty big success after the down year that they had last season as an expansion team. So, with that being said, the league obviously was not a fan of the decision making there to leave the backups in, and we'll clean that up. And I don't think we'll ever see that again. One of those 1 in a million SFL moments that, at the time it feels painful, but honestly, it's what makes the league special at the end of the day. You've just got all these once in a lifetime. I mean, did you see that Josh Gill catch? We'll get to the DC game later, but oh my gosh, on the sideline, that was unbelievable. I got some stills of that we'll put in the wrap-up, but holy moly, that was one of the best plays I've seen.
Yeah, unfortunately, I saw that catch, Cam.
But we'll get to that game later. We've talked about these two teams a little bit because the Pacific is so important. But Vancouver won 45-36, and if I were to tell the fans at home who didn't see the game that Vancouver won the game with defense, they'd say, I don't understand. But that's exactly what Vancouver did.
Yeah, this was one of the weirdest 45-36 games.
It really was. It was
that
crazy.
You would ever want to see. As you mentioned, Vancouver did well on defense. It started off with Ashley Rose Finch with a huge interception on the first possession of the game. The second possession of the game, Drew Hamilton with a pick six. That was followed by Dean Maddox with a pick six for Vancouver. So, yeah, the defense definitely stepped up and made a statement in this game. But then you turn around and you look at Los Angeles. Ryan Yosef had a huge game with a couple of interceptions of his own. Thomas Rahman Thomas Rahman Jr. had an interception in this game. I mean, the defenses definitely came to play. And then at the end of the day, when I looked at some of the quarterback numbers from Sully Richardson and Tom Pepper, as far as yardage wise, they both went over 400. Sully almost went for 500. It was 471. But Sully he had 5 interceptions, and Tom Pepper had 5 interceptions as well. So, yeah, the defenses definitely came to play in this game. I'm looking at the stats here. More Rivers came through with a sack. It was great defense all over the place. The offense obviously put up some numbers, but, man, we had pick sixes and interceptions and sacks. The defenses put on the show in this game.
We're not talking about it tonight, or we're not talking about all the games tonight. We never do here on Wrapup. But, golly, it was a horrible week for quarterbacks. I mean, this was more than I can ever remember. It was brutal. Carolina and Charleston, at one point in the week, we had a game break ready. And before we could get to the game break, 3 more interceptions happened. The Lone Star Las Vegas game, I think, is the first game I can ever remember where both quarterbacks finished with less than a 50% completion percentage. Yeah. That game was ugly. And Vegas pulled that out to keep their playoff hopes alive. But, oh, my gosh, this game was no different. L.A. went away from Robert Johnson, and it cost him. Because while Sully threw a ton, and it was great to see Chris Lee and Davius Reed going ham, golly, the mistakes ended up costing them the game because Vancouver turned them into points quick.
Yeah, Cam, you never could have convinced me of a game with Robert Redford and Robert Johnson involved that you would tell me that, and both teams scored, a combined almost 90 points, that they would have less than 50 yards rushing combined. I mean, that's how crazy this game was, as we're accustomed to seeing those guys make huge plays on offense, and particularly on the ground. And we got basically none of that in this game. So that crazy game far as that goes. Quarterback play, they did manage the yardage, but 10 interceptions between both of them, and the 2 aforementioned games with Charleston and Carolina and Vegas and Lone Star. Man, if we had a ugly game of the season award, those 2 would be competing for that award. That was 2 ugly games that we saw this weekend. It
was rough. And I don't know why teams are allergic to running the ball. And speaking of being allergic to running the ball, the London Knights played the DC Dragons on Monday night, a game that was frozen in time, literally, in the third quarter, where London was up on DC 17-14. And Monday night, London beat DC 17-13 in a wild game. I mean, it wasn't a poorly played game. It was actually quite excellent to watch these 2 defenses work against each other. I wouldn't call it bad offense. I thought it was pretty good defense on both sides, Mike, and they really had these offenses bothered. At the end of the day, London keeps their slim playoff hopes alive by beating Baltimore. They certainly got a whole lot better by getting to 5 wins. And DC lost another game by less than 6 points, their 7th of the season.
Yeah, but first and foremost, not a case of bad offenses at all. 2 great defensive game plans that came into this game tonight. DC, man, all hats off to them. They did an extremely great job of slowing down the London receivers in this game. They went pretty much press coverage at least. Seemed like 70% of the snaps, and the London receivers were having trouble getting off the ball, which in turn through Johnny Pickler's timing off that he likes to, hit these receivers with. And, DeSantis did a great job on Van Callier all game long. He struggled, mightily until he had a big catch at the end of the game to pretty much seal the victory. But, man, both defenses really came to play. Kevin Say did get close to 100 yards, if I'm not mistaken. But the London defense did a great job on containing him for most of the night. And, the DC wide receivers, they really didn't get off the ball much as well. London didn't run a press coverage on them, but they bottled up their receivers. We've been seeing Bainfield make big plays over the past couple of weeks. He did have no, that was Gill with the big catch, but Bainfield didn't do much in this game. And kudos to both defenses, but London made enough plays to pull out the victory. And as you mentioned, keep the playoff hopes alive.
Huge shout-outs to Josh Gill, 2 one-handers in the fourth quarter that were immaculate. And I apologize. I think I said Bamfield had scored the touchdown on the air, but it was Josh Gill who snagged that football. Game balls, Mike. This was one heck of a weekend with some stellar performances. Let's see who you steal from me.
Well, Cam, we're going to go to one of the ugly games.
Okay.
And that was all defense. And I don't need to look it up. I know who I'm giving it to. It's going to be Jack Brown.
Brown, okay.
That
was not where I was going.
Has been in this league a long time, had a huge pick six. The only touchdown in this game was Jack Brown's pick six, his first pick six of his career. Also had 8 tackles in this game. Charleston wins this game 13-6. They also had a huge interception from Corey Minner to seal the victory in the end zone for Charleston and get them to 6 wins on the season. But yeah, Jack Brown's huge pick six, a huge reason why Charleston won this game, because there was no other offense anywhere else to be found. Jack Brown, my first game ball.
That's a great one. And that was exciting to see. It's always exciting seeing players get their first, especially players who have been in the league for years. He's been here. He was at the first convention, man. I mean, the guy's a lifer. And that was really cool to see him get that in that moment, in that spot. Okay, I'm going to go Phil Koss, because you can't stop this guy inside the 10-yard line. St. Louis needed everything. He only had 4 catches and he had 3 touchdowns, Mike. I mean, this guy's come out of nowhere this season. I think he had 4 coming into the game, or 4 here in the last couple of weeks. And he is just he's just going ballistic. You can't stop him inside the 20. St. Louis's red zone offense has been some of the best of any team all season long. And on the flip side, Louisiana had 8 plays inside the 6 with less than a minute to go and could not score. And Chris Earl dropped a potentially game-tying touchdown. They would have still needed the 2, but that didn't happen. But Phil Koss was the red zone defense for St. Louis, so he gets my first game ball.
Well, thank you, Cam, for stealing one of mine.
Yes. Nailed it.
Yeah, he was definitely on my list. As you mentioned, 3-4 catches,
it's a
3
rarity.
touchdowns, and Cam only 28 yards receiving. So hey, when inside the red zone, defensive coordinators look for Phil Koss. Try to shut Phil Koss down when you get inside the red zone. It's definitely well deserved. As you mentioned, only 4 touchdowns coming in, because he's come on strong as of late, and add another 3 to his total. Yeah, Phil Koss, I mean, man, he may end up with double-digit touchdowns before it's all said and done.
Now let's hope you don't get me back.
I'm going to go.
I need this win, Mike.
I'm going to go with another team that has struggled offensively all season long, and they changed some things up and probably ruined a team's playoff hopes this weekend.
Okay.
These guys scored more points than they have all season long, I believe. Sioux Falls Sparrows and Colin Hart, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a huge game. That he played like the Colin Hart that we have grown accustomed to seeing, especially to their SFL finals run a couple of seasons ago. And that's the Sioux Falls Sparrows team that I have grown accustomed to see. Colin Hart gets my second game ball.
Well, I just because I'm on a roll and I'm feeling it, I'm going to save my backup because I might need it. I'm feeling it now. I'm going Ron Cochran. And I got 2 in a row now. Come on,
no,
Mike.
You don't.
Oh,
no, he wasn't.
Okay, Ron Cochran, Mike. He threw 1 incompletion, and it just so happened that it was a pick 6. But the ball never touched the ground for Ron Cochran in this game. 32 for 33, 356 yards, and Florida needed every bit of it. Jacksonville gave them a huge test, just like they gave to Baltimore. And when you look at Jacksonville and Queen City over the last 3 weeks, it's like they're playing mirror image football just in a totally different way. They both played Baltimore and Florida extremely tough and come out just a little bit short. Maybe Queen City just a little bit tougher than Jacksonville, but same storylines there. But Ron Cochran, 30. That's got to be an SFL record. I mean, we don't have completion percentage records, but there's never been a game where a quarterback has thrown no incompletions. So this has to be the record. I mean, what a performance.
Yeah, definitely a great performance from Ron Cochran in that game. But more importantly, Florida Storm, the team, they seem to be peaking at the right time, Cam. They have been up against great opponents, as you mentioned. They've knocked every challenge off. I don't think they've lost since they lost to Fort Worth early in the season. Mighty's been putting together some great game plans, and Florida, they've clinched a bye in the playoffs, so they don't have to play that extra game. So look out, wildcard teams. Mighty's going to have an extra week to prepare for you guys and get ready. So yeah, a great performance from Ron, but look out for the Storm in the playoffs.
By the way, first top 5 seeds have a combined 10 SFL championships. Seeds 6 through 14 have 0. Jacksonville, DC and Denver are the only active teams that have titles that are not in the playoff picture right now. Although Denver is right on the outside, but yeah, the top 5 teams are super good. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to imagine that a 6 or lower seed is able to come back and win the title. But stranger things have happened. Last game ball, Mike.
My last one's going to go to a rookie, and he really made a difference in this game because without him, I think Queen City pulls the upset. It goes to Jimmy Hazard, 138 yards and a touchdown. He kept the Queen City defense just off balance enough to keep Baltimore drives moving at a key points in this game. And we're not talking about a ton of carries to get to that 138. I think he had less than 20 carries. I think about 17 carries throughout the season. His yards per carry has been pretty high. I think it's over 7. So yeah, he had a huge 38-yard touchdown run, as I mentioned earlier. And he was key to this game because the explosive Baltimore pass game was not present in this game, and they'd lose this game without Jimmy Hazard.
Yeah, that's a good one. They gave it to the Duke this week. I think Queen City was a little surprised, quite frankly, that he had that many carries, and you can point to that as him being the difference in the game. There's a lot of different ways you can go with that Queen City Baltimore game. There's so many levels to it, but Hazard continuing to lead the league in yards per carry is another level of the Baltimore that makes them the championship favorite, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, for all the defense this week, Mike, you've gone straight offense, and so have I. I can't let that slide.
Well, Jack Brown.
Oh, yeah. How did I miss that? Golly, what is the matter with me? That's too long. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. Honorable mention to A.J. Levy. I was going to give Sioux Falls their dues. He had 2 big picks at the end of each half that were critical for that win. But my last game ball is going to go to Drew Hamilton. When was the last time you saw a safety with 14 solo tackles? He had a pick 6 in this game. LA tried to open it up. They threw it 65 times. I mean, they threw it all over the field. And Drew Hamilton stepped up, had the big pick 6, and it kind of got Vancouver rolling in that game. And I don't think we've mentioned Drew Hamilton's name on this show all season long. Right. And he had a great game. And even though they gave up 36 points, it was just a crazy game. And Vancouver's defense didn't play terrible. I mean, they were all over the place, picking off pass after pass. So I got to give it to Hamilton. That's a hell of a stat line.
Yeah, Hamilton actually had a great game aside from the pick 6, as you mentioned, the 14 tackles. If I'm not mistaken, he may have had another interception in this game as well. But he definitely helped set the tone for this game. And not to mention that, the Robert Johnson only with 8 yards total on the ground in this game. And a great defensive game plan, obviously, because they came extremely prepared for the possibility of Los Angeles putting the ball in the air. We know they typically like to do the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but they went away from that this game. And the Drew Hamilton and the Vancouver secondary definitely answered the call.
Week 12 is going to be crazy. Let's set the stage because I really like making people sweat. We're going to start with Saturday. We're going to start with all the 4 and 7 teams. Y'all are all going to try to get your victories, stay in playoff contention. Then we're going to go to the Pacific on national TV, where we will find out who is going to win that Pacific Division, with LA playing after Vancouver, or starting after Vancouver and Portland. So whoever wins that game is going to be hoping for an LA loss to try to win the division title. Then the 5 and 6 teams are going to get underway. London and Vegas Saturday night, trying to get wins to ruin all of the 7-loss teams who are hoping to claim that last spot. Then Sunday morning or Sunday early afternoon on FTF, we've got 2 more 5 and 6 teams. Lone Star and Louisiana, they got to take care of business. They got Fort Worth and Tulsa, who are 2 teams that are eliminated from the playoffs. Don't get upset. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin your season. And then at the last block, St. Louis at Atlanta and DC and Queen City. Atlanta and Queen City are fighting for that potential first-round bye. St. Louis also could be fighting to keep their playoff hopes alive. And Saturday night, late, get some coffee. Stay up with us. We're going to live stream our scenario show. First time that you'll get a behind-the-scenes look as we go through 16 possible scenarios left on Sunday, and we'll show you how it all works out, how it all plays out in real time, so you can see who you might play in the first round. If you're eliminated from the playoffs, what your one chance might be. You're going to see that happen in real time on our family of networks. So that is the Week 12 setup, and we're going to be here for it all, Mike. Next weekend, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, Cam, definitely looking forward to Week 12. All type of things could, still on the table that could possibly happen. In particular, looking forward to that London-Baltimore game, of course. But, man, I can't wait for all of the Week 12 action.
We'll see you then. Until then, he's Mike. I'm Cam, and this has been Game Day Wrap-Up. We'll see you next weekend.